All right, well, welcome to week 3. This week we are studying biology. This is a 3-week unit. The first week we are doing is neurons. We did our pipe cleaner neurons on Friday, so let's cover the content that's going on inside. So, the overview of neurons, as we kind of covered on Friday with the parts of the neuron, now we need to know where they're all connected. Now, the nervous system is where we're focusing in on. It's an extensive network of specialized cells that carry information from all parts of the body. Now, we use neuroscience to study that, and that deals with the structure and the function of the neurons, nerves, nervous system, all those is what a neuroscience does. So when we watch Grey's Anatomy and we see people or in real life know people who are neurosurgeons, they are very, very impressive because they're dealing with some of the most sensitive parts of our bodies that are the foundation of everything. When we think about neurons and neuroscience, we're looking at the relationship of behavior and learning. Now, when we have the nervous system, there is 2 major parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. In both the central and the peripheral, we have systems that fall underneath it. And this is where a lot of confusion comes. In the central nervous system, central core is your brain and your spinal cord. This is where everything is being pushed through, everything is being processed, and is obviously the core, which is why it's called central. In our peripheral, which is where our kids have the most problem, there's the autonomic and the somatic. The autonomic is everything that your body does automatically without any conscious awareness. So your autonomic system is your digestion, your salivation, your blood pressure, all that stuff is being done because no one sits around and saying, digest, digest, digest. No one thinks that. So anything that your body does automatically without any type of thinking is autonomic. Now, your somatic system is everything that your body does under your control. So it carries sensory information about movement to the skeletal muscles. So if I wanted to reach up and give you a high five, it's my somatic system that I'm telling to, hey, move your arm up, open up your fingers, smack the hand, that's all that. So the peripheral nervous system falls into 2 major categories, the autonomic and the somatic. Somatic is everything you choose to do. The autonomic is everything your body automatically does. Now, under the automatic is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Now, your parasympathetic system maintains body functions under ordinary condition and saves energy, while your sympathetic is going to react and deal with times of stress, kind of calm you down. So that can get a little tricky. So automatic is one that allows you to function and one that calms you down. Now, this should be a little bit more familiar when we get to the structure of a neuron because we went through it so well before. So what is a neuron? It is the basic cell that makes up the nervous system in which receives and sends messages from that system. It is the foundation of absolutely everything. Now, as we made our neuron, we were talking about all these parts, and we started to label our neuron on Friday, but here are the parts. Now, the starting part of a neuron is called the dendrite, which is branch-like structure that receives messages from other neurons from the synapse. The soma, which is the cell body of the neuron, which is responsible for maintaining the life of the cell, holds the nucleus, which is making all the decisions. In the nucleus, the nucleus has 2 decisions: send the message or not send the message. That's it. There's no other decision. It can't half send, it can't 3/4 send, it is either sends a message or not. Now, the axon is a long tube-like structure that carries the neural message from one side to the other. So it takes it from the soma to the axon terminal. Now, the axon terminal is where we send out information. Now, here is an image of the neurons. Now, the neurons are very much so interconnected, and they depend very, very heavily on one another. This is one thing that allows our brain to think as fast as it does and allows our body to react as fast because all of the neurons are interlayered over each other and are so interconnected that things happen very, very quickly. Now, there are other types of brain cells, the glial cells. Now, the glial cells are going to provide the support. They're essentially the structure. They are the house. They are the framing of the house, and the neurons is everything that goes inside the house. They deliver the nutrients to the neurons. They produce the myelin to coat the axons. They're the ones protecting the neurons and allowing the neurons to function at a high level. Now, myelin, or the myelin sheath, is a fatty substance that is produced by certain glial cells, and they accelerate and insulate neurons to send messages faster and more productive. Glial cells also kind of clean up after the neurons because they're all little functional animals kind of thing. Now, neurons in the body. Now, neurons create nerves. Now, they're bundles of axons in the body that travel together in the same part of the body. Now, what we're going to see is that the more neurons we have in one place, the denser and the more intense the sensation are going to be, because there's so much information that is going to be processed in that one spot. So, like if you take a pen that you're probably holding right now and kind of hit it to the middle of your back of your hand, it's not going to hurt that much. However, if you do it to the point of your fingers where there's a lot more neurons, or like over by like underneath your arm there's a lot more neurons, all those different types of things, it's going to hurt more because there's more axons in that area. Now, when we send a message, what we're doing is that ions are actually involved, and the ions are charged particles. Inside the neuron, they're negatively charged. Outside the neuron, they're positively charged. So what happens is when the message is being sent, the neuron, which is negatively charged, turns positive, and that's how the message is relayed. Don't worry, I'll be doing a little demonstration for you in class to kind of help process that. Now, resting potential is when the neuron is not firing, but it's waiting to fire. It can fire, it's ready to fire, it just hasn't yet. Now, action potential is the release of a neural impulse, or when it's firing, when there is an electrical charge, and this allows positive ions to enter the cell. So action potential is when the neuron fires. Resting potential is when it's set and ready to go. It's just waiting for the go sign. Now, keep in mind, when a neuron fires, it can send a message or not. It cannot do both. So it's referring to the fact that a neuron either fires or completely does not fire at all. It cannot do both. Okay, once it fires, it returns to resting potential, waiting for a new message. A neuron's job is to either transmit or not transmit a message. That is its only choice. Once it's done that, it returns itself to action of resting potential. Once it receives a message to fire, then it goes to action potential. Now, here's a nice little diagram that kind of explains everything. Like I said in class, I'm going to go through it with you, and I think that'll help make it simpler for you. Like I said, I'm not a science person, so I'm going to keep this as simple, stupid as one can possibly be. Now, when you send a message to the other cells, it exits the neuron via axon terminals, which are the branches at the end of the axon, which are in the axon terminal. Now, there's a synaptic knob, which is the round areas of the axon terminals, which is where the actual neural messages go out of the neuron and get pulled in as well. Now, the synaptic vesicles are little structures found inside the synaptic knob, and they contain all the chemicals. So all your neurotransmitters, all those different types of things can be found here. Now, your synapse or your synaptic gap is a gap in between the neurons, and this is where the neurotransmitters jump to send their messages. It's the small little gap between one neuron and the next, and it allows the messages to flood an area. Now, inside of a neuron, there's receptor sites. So there are proteins on the surfaces of the dendrites or on the muscles or glands that only allow certain neurotransmitters to bind there. So only certain neurotransmitters can be picked up at certain receptor sites. So not every neurotransmitter can be picked up at a specific receptor site, but every single neuron can pick up every type of neurotransmitter, of course. Now, here's the bottom of what an axon terminal looks like. And as you'll see at the bottom, you see the synapse, which is the white. Then you have your receptor site, which is on a dendrite. And you're going to see the vesicles carrying the neurotransmitters at the brink of the synapse, and they are sending out the neurotransmitters. Once they are there, they are being processed. Now, when we talk about neuron communication, what we're happening is there's two different ways. There's an excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. Excitatory are firing the receiving cell to increase firing. What that means is that with an excitatory, it requires more neurotransmitters to send. Inhibitory is going to decrease the firing. So once that's picked up, there's less information being shared. So excitatory gets you excited and you just like go, 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 and you're sending more and more neurotransmitters. With inhibitory, you're slowing down the amount of messages being sent across, and that's why it's called inhibitory. Now, when we deal with excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters, we're dealing with chemical substances that can affect neuronal communication. What that means is when you have an excitatory, it sends a message to all neurons that we are excited right now, so release the neurotransmitters required. In inhibitory, it tells everyone to stop and hold back. Now, to have just excited and excitatory and inhibitory would be too polarized. So we have two other type of chemical in there to kind of limit, because not every time it's go, 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 not every time it's stop, stop, stop. Sometimes you need a little bit of both. So we have agonists who mimic or enhance the effect of neurotransmitters in the receptor site by increasing or decreasing. So sometimes you just need a little more of one and not all of them. And antagonists are a blocker reduces the cell's response. So it stops other cells from being picked up. Now, when we talk about neurotransmitters, this is the most challenging part for a lot of students. So please make sure that this is what you are spending your time on. Now, there's many different types, and these are the key. Now, next week, we're going to build on this. And then when we get to drugs, we're going to build on it even more. And these are the things you'll have to be able to discuss and use pretty effectively in order to understand. So let's kind of go through. Now, acetylcholine, also known as ACH, is an excitatory or inhibitory, depending on how it's used. It's involved in arousal, attention, memory, and controls muscles. So acetylcholine is your kind of go-to. When in doubt, ACH is a good idea of who is doing what. It's pretty much the utility of the neurotransmitters. Now, serotonin is your excitatory. It's involved in mood, sleep, and appetite. Okay? Mood, it does make you happy. Sleep, it does make you feel that happiness that you get into bed and when you wake up and all that stuff. It's that calming effect that you receive. Now, GABA is your major inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's going to kind of slow things down and kind of limits how much information your brain's processing. Have you ever noticed that when you sleep, some of us are better at this than others, that your brain just kind of stops? It's your GABA. Your GABA is telling your brain to slow down function of your thoughts that you control to allow you to sleep. And then your brain does its repairing, but we'll get to that when we get to memory. Now, glutamate is your major excitatory neurotransmitter. It's involved in learning, memory formation, nervous system development. So anytime you learn something new, it's your glutamate that's firing. Anytime you're like slowing down and relaxing, your GABA is in full function. Now, neoprephrine is going to be your excitatory. It's only used for arousal and mood. So only really used when you're incredibly, incredibly happy or when you are in a significant mood change. Now, dopamine is an excitatory or inhibitor. It's used for movement and sensation of pleasure. Dopamine is the one that makes you the happiest, that gives you that like life high. Serotonin is that happy, you're giggling and you're having a good time. Dopamine is that like, oh my God, life cannot get better than this. It's sensation of pleasure, it's controlled movement, all those types of things. And finally, endorphins. It's involved in pain relief. When you have an endorphins, typically, if you've ever injured yourself in a game or a sporting event or something, and you never really felt it, that would be endorphins. Your body was in such a rush that you didn't feel it. Now, when we talk about cleaning up the synapse, there's a lot of things that's going on. For instance, when we have all these neurotransmitters that are firing in your brain, you have to limit how much is in there because there could be just too much information. And this is called reuptake. It's when the neurotransmitters are brought back into the synaptic vessels. Remember, our brain is so high functioning, we cannot waste information and energy by just using neurotransmitters once and never using it again. So reuptake is when it gets sucked back into the axon terminal, into a vesicle, and it sits there until it's needed once again. Now, finally, the enzyme is a complex protein that is manufactured by cells, and it's used to break up acetylcholine because acetylcholine is used as such a utility. It just makes it move faster. It just kind of breaks it up for you. All right, guys, there's a lot of really technical things. Please make sure that you are really hunkering down if you do not understand your science. Hopefully this helps. I am going to be in class. I have a couple of demonstrations that we'll be doing to support this, and I hope you have a great week. Thanks for all your hard work. Have a great week.